For those who don't know me, my name's Gaynor Grant. I own the cooking school. I know you can't see me terribly well. I'm going to move the camera up a little bit. This is our bread baking class, and this is the first time we've done this particular class. So any feedback will be greatly appreciated. Obviously, a little tricky doing a bread class because dough has to rise, but I was up at 6 o'clock this morning making doughs in advance, all right? So I'm going to start off by just talking a little bit about flours and things, because there's a lot of difference into the types of, oh, I'm losing my picture's gone away, types of flour that you can use, even in white flour. There are basically three groups of white flour. There is bread flour, all-purpose, and cake flour. And the main difference with those three types of flour is the amount of gluten that's produced when you use them. So the amount of protein in the flour. Bread flour having the highest, usually about 13 to 14%, all-purpose between a 9 and 11, and then cake flour is only 1.8. So you definitely don't want to make bread with cake flour, but you can use all-purpose or plain flour. You'll get a slightly less chewy crust if you use plain all-purpose flour, all right? But still, you can get a great result. I make a lot of my bread with it, it's fine. You'll get a bit more chewy with bread flour. Now, different brands as well makes a considerable difference. It depends where you are in the country, in the world, your elevation, days of the week, time of the year, all sorts of things like that can affect your flour. So you always have to assume that it's an ever-moving target. I would strongly suggest you, with a regular all-purpose or bread flour, you select one that you like and stick with it, particularly when you're starting to experiment with making different doughs. It's better to stick to one type, because if you go from King Arthur to Pillsbury, you'll notice the considerable difference. If you could put yourselves on mute, guys, that would be great. And then just unmute yourselves when you have a question, okay? I'm getting feedback here a little bit. Then moving on to whole wheat flour. Whole wheat flour is a whole grain flour, all right? It's one of many. Rye flour, oats, rice flour, there's about 10 or 12 of sorghum, aramath, they're all whole wheat. A whole grain, I'm sorry, and whole wheat is one of those, all right? So there are, a whole wheat basically means it's the whole wheat. It's the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. All three components in the flour. In all-purpose flour or white bread flour, it's only the endosperm, not the bran and not the wheat germ, okay? They are removed in processing. All right, so that's why it has a brownish look to it, because that stuff is ground up, and it does make a difference. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. I have made two doughs ahead of time that are had their second rise and are ready to go in the oven, because I wanted to do this to show you the end product. All right, this is my whole wheat one, which is nicely risen. Right here, okay? And then this, in my boule bowl, is my all-purpose. Now, obviously, this is wood. I'm not going to bake this. This is a French creation. It leaves little ridges on the dough. I am going to put that onto my baking stone I'm going to use for this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn my stone upside down, and I'm going to carefully turn this out. Now, if you're not using something like this, you would do your final rise on what you're going to cook it in. I'm going to hope it's going to come out. Yes, it does. All right, you can just see it's got a pretty, hopefully you can see it's got a pretty design on it like that. All right, so I'm going to pop these in the oven. Now, the all-purpose one, or the white bread one, is going in at 425 for about 25 to 30 minutes. The whole wheat one is going in at 350, and it's going to take about 45 minutes. And the reason for that being that it's in a more compact space, and it takes a little longer to cook. And also, we'll talk a bit later about the dough being a little wetter. All right, so I'm going to pop these into my oven now, and hopefully we'll have them done, and you can see them by the end of class, okay? I'm going to set my timer for each one. I'm going to actually take out my top rack in here because I'm hoping I'm going to get a good rise and I don't want it to touch the top of the thing. So timer for this one, I'm going to do 45, and then for the other one, I'm going to do 25. There's one. Take the rack out this one. Should have done this earlier, but I forgot. All right, and then I'm going to do 45 on this one. There we go. Perfect. All right, so as I say, I wanted you to see the finished product, okay? So that's why I made them ahead of time, because we really can't stand around here for 6 hours and come back at dinner time tonight and look at them. So I now want to talk a little bit about yeast. I did give you some basic instructions on the printout about yeast. There are about 30 million living cells in a packet of active dry yeast, which double in number when the dough is warmed and mixed with liquid ingredients, and takes about 2 hours. The yeast eats the sugar in the flour, which then sends off carbon dioxide, and that's what makes the bread rise. The term proof literally means to prove that the yeast is working. Now, you don't have to do this with a regular dry yeast or an active dry yeast. You really don't need to do it, but it's often a safe thing to do, just to make sure that your yeast is okay. Now, things mean your yeast may have expired. If you bought it 6 months ago and it's been in the cupboard, it may not work. It will have an expiration date on the packet, whether it's a little packet or a big packet, but when you get close to that date, sometimes the yeast doesn't work properly, and it's better to know at the beginning than go to all the trouble to make the dough, it doesn't rise, which is rather soul destroying, to say the least. So we'll talk about proofing it in a minute in warm water. If you've just bought the yeast and you know it's fresh, you can just add it dry to your flours and everything when you go to mix it. There really isn't a need to do these days to do that. All right. If you do want to buy the fresh compressed yeast, they usually come in 2 ounce in the States, in 2 ounce little blocks, which you get in the dairy section. They are very perishable. It usually only lasts about a week or so. You can freeze it. If you freeze it, I suggest you freeze it in the amounts you need. If you know your recipe calls for a teaspoon of that or a tablespoon, I would break it down into those pieces and freeze it, and then you've got it and you can take it out and defrost it. It's nice if you're making bread a lot. It's more hassle if you're not. You know, if you're only going to make it once every 2 or 3 weeks, then I wouldn't bother really. But as I say, if you have it or somebody gives you some, you'll know what to do with it. If you want to use the fresh yeast, 1 packet, so those little packets that we get that come in 3, 1 packet of those is 2 1/4 teaspoons. All right. So if you get really into this baking yeast and you start buying large amounts, like I do, like this, you need to know what that packet equals. So a packet of yeast is 2 1/4 teaspoons. Oh, I apologize, my phone's going. Or 2/3 of an ounce of the fresh. So if you do get the fresh, you want to experiment with it. A packet is 2/3 of an ounce. All right. So we've kind of got that sorted out. I also have, and I'm going to show you this now as well, just so that we can, we're kind of working backwards, but that's kind of okay. So again, your bread needs 2 rises. All right. I used to have a bread machine. I bought one when they first came out and I thought it was a wonderful idea. I don't want to knock them, but I actually don't like them anymore. The problem being is they only have 1 rise. All right. They only have 1 rise in the process. So I used to actually make the dough and then I would turn it off and start the process all over again. So that's when I realized it was a bit silly in the first place for doing it. So I kind of just, because I got rid of it, because I thought much better to use a KitchenAid, or you can use a Cuisinart. Of course, you can do it by hand. But it really does need, your dough needs 2 rises to really develop the gluten, to develop the flavor, to mature the yeast, and to get a really nice rise from your dough. With the bread dough machines, the recipes that come with it have a large amount of sugar. Now that high amount of sugar enables the yeast to work faster. Whoopee, the dough rises a lot, but I always say you end up with like store-bought packaged plastic bread, because it's sweet and it doesn't have any substance, and it's not chewy, and it's not all the things you expect with a homemade bread. So as I say, if you've got one and you're going to use it, I would use it, let it knead, let it rise, then turn it off and put it on again, so that it kneads again a little bit and then rises a second time, and then let it bake, and then it's fine. It works fine that way, unless they've changed. But as far as I know, I haven't even looked at one in the recent years, but that's how they used to work anyway. And they used to suggest using rapid rise yeast. Now, rapid rise yeast is manufactured in a way to like with the sugar, to help the dough to rise really quickly. Works really well, doesn't work on taste. The taste is not good. So I would avoid rapid rise yeast. I actually, years and years ago, back in the 80s, when it was first brought out, I did a recipe testing for Fleischmann's on the rapid rise as opposed to the regular yeast. And I was doing it at the cooking school I was working at, and the general consensus then was, nah, we'll just wait for it to rise the long way. If we're going to make the dough, we might as well do it the right way and get it started and do it that way. So that's what we ended up suggesting, but obviously it has its uses. It's fine for something that maybe only needs a quick rise or something, but generally speaking, when you're making your own artisan breads, you want to use the long method. It works better. Also, that being said, you can let your doughs rise in your refrigerator. In fact, that's what I did with the batch I've just put in the oven. I made it last night, put it in a bowl, covered it with plastic, and let it do its first rise overnight. Now, by putting it in the fridge, it's very cool. It's cold, so it inhibits the rise. So it does rise, but if you left it sitting out, it would rise beyond itself. And I'll show you in a minute what you're looking for when it would overproof. If you do it in the fridge, it doesn't overproof, but you can leave it overnight and then take it out, form it, and then you could put it back in the fridge for its second rise if you wanted to. You probably won't get quite as much rise, but you know, if you have to go somewhere and then come back and cook it, the cooking time isn't the issue, it's the rising that takes a long time. So that is a very good alternative as well. I don't particularly advocate freezing your homemade doughs. You can experiment, you know, the doughs itself, you can experiment. I have done it with a dough that I've let rise once and frozen it, and I've also done it where I've let it rise twice and freeze it and then cook it from frozen. It does work, and it is an alternative, but it wouldn't really be my favorite choice. Okay, so I actually have done quite a big batch of dough here, because this is more than that basic recipe, because I want to do a number of different things with it with you guys in a minute. This, as I say, I'm going to take this off so you can see this. This is the whole wheat one, and it's a little softer, and I'll explain why that is when we get to actually make the dough. So I'm going to leave these for a bit. I'm going to we'll make our doughs first, and then we'll come back to the forming and what you do with them to let them rise a second time. Okay, so hopefully you can all see I am going to use my KitchenAid. The KitchenAid comes with a dough hook, all right, and most food processors do. You can also use a Cuisinart, you know, I shouldn't say Cuisinart, I should say food processor. The only thing I would say do not use, even though it comes with it, the Cuisinarts in particular come with a dough blade, which is the plastic blade. It don't work, because what happens when you're making a good dough that's rather dense, the dense dough pushes that dough blade up and it all gets stuck underneath, the machine stops, and you have a devil of a job trying to separate the two pieces, and the dough is all up inside the beater, the blade thing, and it's a pain. So when I do it in the Cuisinart, I do use the metal blade, and purists would argue, oh, well, you're cutting through the gluten. Yes, I am somewhat. It's a very quick way of making the dough, but we are going to use this today. But as I say, you can just use do it by hand if you want to, and I'll explain a little bit about that in a second. The only difference about doing by hand, it takes quite a lot longer, but it's a very it depends on your mindset. I think it's a very good way of relieving stress. You know, some of us go and run, but if you can knead dough with all that aggression and get rid of all your aggression from the day, it's really good. You can take it out on the dough while you're kneading it, and that's not such a bad idea, really, sometimes. All right, so let's start with the white bread recipe. This is a classical, really sort of French bread dough recipe. Very little sugar, and in proportion, it's a third amount of the sugar to the salt. You need the salt in there. Believe me, I've made it a number of times. I've left the salt out by mistake, and it tastes like meh. Doesn't taste very good at all. So you do want to make sure that you have got your salt in there, and the little bit of sugar. We need that sugar, remember, to activate the yeast. Okay. The other really important thing, probably the most important thing, is to make sure that the water you're using, or any liquid you're using, in whatever recipe you're using, whether it's milk or could be beer or something like that, that it's the right temperature. It wants to be between 100 and 120 degrees. That might sound a bit weird, but anything more than 120, it will kill the yeast. Okay, less than 100 just means it's going to take the yeast longer to work. So it's actually better for the water to be a bit cool than too warm. But if you can get it around that 110, 120, if you're not good at guessing that, get a little instant thermometer, and you can take the temperature with that. It's usually like warm bath water, really, is the sort of temperature you're looking for. Now, in this recipe, I have said bread flour or all-purpose. Now, if you're using all-purpose, again, remember, flours differ. So the amount of liquid you need to make a perfect consistency dough will vary from brand, and it varies from all-purpose to bread flour, because there is more protein, hence gluten, in bread flour. You will need a little bit more water usually. All right, now this time of year when it's very humid, your water content in any dough you make, whether it's cake batter or bread dough or whatever, tends to be decreased, can be. This is because your flour will absorb moisture from the atmosphere. Now, I store my flour in sort of plastic containers, which can reduce that a little bit. But even then, sometimes we find at the cooking school, we'll buy a 50-pound bag of flour and it'll have a lot more moisture content than the 50-pound bag of flour we had before. So I always sort of say, err on the side of caution, add a little less water to start off. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. You know, you don't really want to be adding more flour to your recipe and messing the whole sort of experiment or scientific experiment out. Okay, so we're going to start off. I'm going to get some warm water. I'm going to proof my yeast first so you can see what it looks like. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to go with 1.5 cups of water because I'm using bread flour, but you may only need 1 1/3. It'll really depend. But so let your water run and get it nice and warm, like warm bath water. There we go. So I'm going to go between 1 1/3 and, yeah, between 1 1/3 and 1.5. It is so humid at the moment. So here is my water. Now into that water, I'm going to add my sugar and my yeast, okay? So I'm going to add my teaspoon of sugar. And my sorry, I should get the 1/4 teaspoon out and be exact. My packet of yeast, which is 2 teaspoons and 1/4 teaspoon, okay? So 1, 2, and then my 1/4 teaspoon. And then just mix that together gently. And just pop it to one side. This is just so that we prove our yeast is working. Now, what you want to see, I've got bubbles in it at the moment because I whisked it. What you want to see is a few bubbles arising in the yeast, okay, in the mixture. So we'll see that in a minute. Okay, So if you're doing this by hand, whether you're going to do it on the table or you're doing it in a bowl, you want to measure in your 3 1/2 cups of flour. I am using bread flour. So scoop and swoop. All right. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to be exact. I usually guess. You can guess really, but I'm going to use my 1/2 cup measure as well.
Can I interrupt with a quick question? Mike
yes.
Here.
Yes, I might.
I don't have a dough hook. All I've got is this attachment. Should I do it by hand or can I use this attachment? Can you see it?
No, I can't see it. What is? Hold on, 1 sec.
Yeah. It's like a blade, you know, like a paddle kind of thing.
Oh, like the paddle. Yes. You mean like this? Like this?
Exactly like that. That's it.
Yes.
I've got one of those.
Then use that.
Okay?
That would be okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
It should have come with one, but if it didn't, yes, that's your best bet. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Okay. So I have my 3 1/2 cups of flour in here. Okay. Now I'm going to put my salt in. Tablespoon of salt. Where did I put my tablespoon? All right. Oh, there it is. Tablespoon of salt. All right. Now, what I want to do, because yeast doesn't like salt. So what I do want to do first, before I add this, I want to incorporate my salt and my flour together, just so I'm not dropping the yeast on the flour, on the salt that's in there on the top. All right. Okay, just enough to mix it together. Okay. All right. So, am I getting some bubbles yet? Not quite. It usually takes about 3 or 4 minutes to get those. As I say, if you have a new packet of yeast and you know it's fine, then great. You can just go ahead and do that straight away. So I've lost my picky here. There we go. But yeah, so you want to let it rise a little bit. Also, one thing I didn't say, if you do decide, it's much cheaper to buy your yeast in bulk, like a pound packet, you can get it at Costco, Sam's, or whatever. If you do that, keep it in the freezer. Just keep the whole container in the freezer. It doesn't freeze or anything, it still stays like this. That extends the life of it considerably. A bag will last a year at least. All right, and you'll know because you'll make a batch of dough and suddenly it won't be rising like it should, and you've done everything perfectly and it's not rising. So that will be the reason, because the yeast has kind of got a little old, all right, and doesn't like what's going on. All right, I do have some bubbles now. I can see my bubbles being generated. I don't know whether you guys can see on there. Got a little bit of fluffiness going on. If you can see on my finger, then I know my yeast is fine. My water is nice and warm. So one thing as well, one thing that will kill your KitchenAid is making bread dough. I brought this one home from the school because the one I have here makes the most awful noise. And it's been doing it for a long time. And I really need to get it down to get repaired because I've over abused it, I think, a little bit. But you want to be kind to your mixer when you're making bread dough. They say, KitchenAid says, you really shouldn't go above like 4 or 5 when you're mixing your dough, because you tend to burn the motor out or knock the cogs out or do something that makes a horrible noise, or it just seizes and starts to smell and everything. So you don't want to do that. So with this on about 3 or 4, I'm going to start it low so I don't get it all over the place. You want to pour your liquid in. Make sure you've got all your yeast in. Sometimes you might get a little bit stuck in your, sticking to, actually this isn't too bad, but sometimes I get a bit stuck in the bottom. Now, how do you know if you've measured your 2 ingredients correctly? What you're looking for is that your dough should come together. Some of it will stick to your beater, but it should do what we say, clean the bowl. So in other words, you should have no residue flour in the bottom. You should have no liquid floating around, and it should be a solid lump, and the bowl should look clean, i.e. there'll be a few things, a bit stuck on the outside, but it should come together as a dough in the middle of your machine, all right? And don't be, you probably want to knead it. I usually knead for about 3 to 4 minutes in the machine. After it comes together for like 2 minutes, but and be patient. Let it come together gradually, all right? A little bit at a time. Don't be thinking, oh, it's done. And it wants to look nice and smooth. We often say the outside, the dough wants to look a bit smooth, like a newborn baby's bottom. I don't know if we're allowed to say that anymore, but this makes me laugh when I say that. So, and if you find it's a little dry, you can put a tablespoon more of water in. Mine's looking slightly dry. I erred on the side of caution, so I wasn't quite sure how my flour was going to react. I should have known really. But by now, let me turn this off and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, just take this off. Okay, so if you can see, it's mostly coming together, but I'm going to give it a feel. It feels a little bit dry. All right. So again, this is something that will come with trial and error. The reason why you want perfect consistency dough, or a number of reasons. If your dough is too dry, the gluten or the yeast has trouble making those gluten strands. Gluten strands are what develop when you're kneading it. Because they're dry, they don't want to do this. If they're too soft or wet, they go like this. And when they go like this, your bread goes like this. All right. So when you cook it, your dough will rise. Instead of rising up like this, it rises out like this. And sometimes we'll sort of go down in the middle and out on the sides. It looks, it looks like it's like that, when it's too wet. Okay. So that's why you want to get the right consistency. So I'm going to put just another tablespoon of water in here and pop it back on the machine. I'll do it back to front, put it on. And if you're not sure, give me a shout and we can see how it's doing. All right. Oops. There we go. Nope. Didn't get myself in. There we go. All right, so that was just enough. 1 tablespoon was plenty. Okay, it was perfectly adequate amount. All right. So I think we've got someone else. Okay, we're good. It's coming together now in one piece, so that's great. And it's starting to look smooth now as well, so that's really good. I'm just turning the spin off. There we go. All right. I'll let that run for another minute or so, okay? And then what you need a bowl to put this in. It can be any sort of bowl. And you want to put a little bit of flour in the bottom of the bowl, or you can spray it with spray just to stop the dough from sticking. All right, I think we're good. So I'm going to turn mine off. I'm going to get it out and I'll show you the consistency we're looking for as well as far with the touch and everything. All right, it should come off. It should be stick to this, but it should come off. All right. Okay, this is my dough. It feels wet, damp, but if you can see, when I take my hand off, there's nothing stuck on my hand. So it's sticky, but not so sticky that I can't take my hands away from it. All right, that's perfect. That's just how you want it to be, okay, for this dough. This will be able to rise, those strands will develop. So what happens is when that gluten, the kneading, whether you're doing it by hand, and I often do a bit of this afterwards just for the fun of it, this is developing the gluten. Those strands, which are like rubber bands, all right? You're making rubber bands. This is what will make pastries shrink, actually, so you don't want that. Oh, my dough's were, and then I'm gonna pop it in my bowl, and then I'm gonna get my, okay. There's my bread dough. So, grab another mitt. Now, it looks done. You want to, oh, I did put cornmeal on here, but it's sticking. In fact, I didn't put cornmeal on, sorry. I should have put cornmeal on here. That's why it stuck a little bit, but not too badly. Should be hollow on the bottom. Okay? And then I'm going to put it on a cooling rack because you want it to cool without sweating. There we go. All right. All right, now you want to cover this. Cover it either with plastic wrap, or say I've got these little things that are elasticated, plastic. So I'm going to put this over it. For the first rise, it's okay, it's in a deep bowl, but if the bowl's a bit shallow, make sure you spray the underneath of that with Pam or something, because you don't want your dough to stick to the dough because it will deflate it. All right, so let's get the whole wheat one done. Now, a little bit different with the whole wheat. Now, and the reasons for this are, we're using whole grain dough, whole grain flour. So you can make it with all whole grain. I would suggest, like we're going to do today, you start off with half and half whole grain, half regular bread flour. A little bit more warm water because it absorbs, the two things together absorb more water. Whole grain flour does not develop or doesn't have as much gluten as bread flour or all-purpose. Therefore, you want something sweet in there, a little bit more sweetness. Now you can either use sugar or honey, or you could use maple syrup or agave. But you'll see the amount, I've got 1.5 tablespoons of sugar in here. My other recipe was only a teaspoon of sugar. That honey, and that helps to develop the yeast and helps to make the yeast work better, which makes the gluten rise. Also, the more liquid, we're going to have a softer dough, softer textured dough, which is why we bake it in a loaf pan, because if we baked it freeform, that would happen to what I just told you about. It would like this. Also, you can see slightly more yeast for the same reason, and slightly and about the same amount of salt. Okay, so slightly different proportions. You can up and down these when you get creative. You can. This is not vanilla. What's name? I just keep my flour in here. 1 3/4 of all-purpose. And the same of the whole wheat, okay? So I've got 1/4, a half. I'm going to do 2 halves actually, because getting it out of here with a cut thing is a little difficult. Okay. So I'm not going to proof my yeast this time. I'm just going to put it in. All right, save us a little bit of time. So we have a whole tablespoon of yeast this time. So 3/4 teaspoon more than we had before. Get my water. So 1.5 cups of water. And I am using honey. You are more than welcome to use sugar if you'd like. So with the honey, I'm doing 1.5 tablespoons of honey. That's one. I've got a half tail, I'll just do roughly half on this. I have got a half tablespoon somewhere. All right. And then I think the only other thing I need is my salt. Just double check. It'll be the first time I've made it without something. I did put my yeast in. Yes, I did. Most important, I put the yeast in. Okay, so have all that in there. We're going to do the same thing. Woo, working back to front here. There we go. Okay, a bit of space. So I'm going to start adding my water. Slow, steady stream. Get a little bit around there, get it around the side. Take it up a tiny bit. All right, I'm getting a little bit more water. I can see it's a little dry. Maybe I didn't quite measure it enough. Now with this dough, we want this to be a little bit sticky. Let me see if I can show you. This was the dough I made, which I'm going to show you how to punch down in a minute. It's a little sticky, you see? All right, so that's what I want. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to that. As I say, it's a visual thing, a consistency thing. That's all you're looking for, okay? While that's running, I'm just going to show you. So this, how you know if this is risen enough? If you stick your fingers in the middle, I'm going to put a bit of flour on my fingers. For your first rise, you stick your fingers in, and they stay down like that. Then you know your dough is proofed enough for your first rise, okay? All right, so I need another bowl for this one, which I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to put a bit of flour on here. I'm actually going to turn this dough out and use this bowl. I'll put a drop more flour in the bottom. I just want to get on and show you how to form all this stuff. So the same thing, it doesn't want to be so sticky that it really sticks to the outside of the bowl, but it wants to, you'll see when I take it out that it is stickier. It's going to be more like this. It's more, okay? Now, ideally, as I said, for the whole wheat, you want to have a pan you spray, some sort of loaf pan or something, but you can bake it in a cast iron or oven-proof casserole dish or something. It doesn't matter really, but something that contains it. All right, so spray this well like that. All right, I think we're good. So you can already see my dough sticking more to my beater than the last one. All right. And when I first started doing this, it seemed very strange to me. I'm like, oh, no, that's too wet. It's too wet. But it really isn't. Okay, nice and smooth. There's no flour in the bottom. It's sticking to the bottom a little bit, but that's okay. But it's sort of worked its way around. So then this average rising time, about 2 hours, all right, for both rises, the proofing rise and the second rise, all right, on average. You can, when it's a nice warm day, you can put it outside. I wouldn't put it in direct sunlight. In direct sunlight, it tends to, it gets very damp looking and whatever. But all right, so that's my other dough. And I'm going to pop this on top. And that will take about another 2 hours to rise, okay? All right, let me move this over here. So this is my dough, all right? So what I'm going to do, this is the one I'm going to put in here. It is a little soft, but it's going in the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to give it a little couple of kneads. I need to knead. All right. And then just with your hands, flatten it out a little bit. And then just fold it, kind of roll it like this. And then you're going to turn it, roll side down, pop it in your pan, and just give it a, you know, you don't have to, it will fill the pan, but you just flatten it out a little bit in the bottom. If you want to put cuts on the top, you can do that, one down the middle or 2 or 3 little cuts. Use a sharp knife. You can also buy a dough blade as well, which is like a razor blade, and you can use that. This wants to be covered again, all right? Lost my little bag. These are great. I got these at the dollar store, I think. And they're like just, you know, they're like shower caps, but they work really well. All right, so that will take, what you're looking for that is it should come at least to the top of the pan. And when you touch it and you put your finger in on the corner, it should, the little dent, it should stay there. If it springs back up, it needs some more time to rise, okay? All right, so how am I doing for time? Oh, I'm okay. I was getting a bit worried, I thought we were moving a bit fast. All right, so this is my, I think I made almost a double, I did make a double batch of the recipe you have. See how beautifully risen it is? Now, the way you check with this, again, I'm going to stick my fingers in. Yes, it collapsed and all went in the middle, all right? I also know it's been rising for about 2 hours, okay? So I'm gonna clear off this flour because I don't want to use, as it's the regular flour. I mean, yeah, I don't want to use the bread flour. Wash my hands. And I'm gonna put some bread flour on here. Now, you can obviously do anything you like with these. I'm just gonna give you a few ideas of things. I'm just gonna go and check the dough first and see how that's doing. Looking good, it's getting there, needs a few more minutes, I think. So, take your dough, punch it down, pull it out, tip it out, okay? Got a nice big piece here. I'm gonna give it a little knead. It feels good. And I'm gonna show you a couple of different things you can do with this. We'll start off with a baguette, all right? So it doesn't matter how much you use, maybe about 1/3 of this because it's kind of big. Cut a piece off. I'm gonna make it. Don't have too much flour, just enough flour in front of you to stop the dough from sticking to the table, all right? Because you're gonna have to roll, you're gonna roll this out of it, and it won't roll if you sliding across things. Sometimes you end up putting a few drops of water on, all right? So I have my piece of dough here. So what I want to do, I want to flatten this out to about, equally about 4 inches wide, all right? Now it's a bit thinner at one end, so I'm gonna play around with it a bit, but about 4 inches wide, roughly. Then what I want you to do is to fold it in half, take the tips of your fingers, press it together. So I give it a seam, all right? Then roll it out. Oh, I don't like this. Hold on, I'm just gonna start again. I didn't like that little fold I had in there. I've got a fold in it, it's gonna look funny when I bake it, all right? So. Fold it in half, press it down, and then I'm gonna move some of that flour, and then using both hands, I'm gonna roll it out to about 6 or 8 inches. It's a little fatter at one end, so I'm going to lean on that end. When it's a little bigger again, got to do that fat bit at one end. There we go. Then I'm going to do the same again. Punch it down. This is Julia Child's technique for doing this, and I think it works really well. Losing my watch. So same thing. The idea here is you're trying to get your dough equal thickness. All right. So if you need to thin out one end a bit more, I've still got a slightly fat end over here. Excuse me. Fold again. All right. Pinch. I'm going to pinch tight, or it's going to come undone. Right. Then you want to roll your dough out to the required length for your baguette. Now it's up to you. You can make a skinny baguette, a big baguette. Bear in mind, this is going to increase in size, at least double the size that you put it in the oven. Always getting rid of it. Just make sure it's round. Okay, now you can just put this, I've got mine about 8 inches, 9 inches, I suppose. You can just put this straight on a cookie sheet. A new little toy I've just bought is this. It's for doing baguettes in. It's got holes in, which helps the dough to cook on the underneath. All right. So on here, and this goes onto a cookie sheet. On here, I'm gonna put a little bit of cornmeal, and then I'm going to lay my bread on there. Now, it is going to cook on here. I know with the other thing, we took it out and pulled out, but generally speaking, the place you put your dough to rise for the last time is the thing you're going to cook it in, because if you try and tip it off something like this, it's going to catch and then it'll deflate. All right. So you normally want to do that. That's why with the wooden thing, it works fairly well because nothing sticks to that. And you want to take a sharp knife, and we'll do the classic across like this. And then I'm going to put this on a cookie sheet. Put it on that one? No. So on a cookie sheet like that, you want to cover it. Now, if you decide to cover it with plastic, make sure you spray the plastic on the side that you're putting onto the bread, otherwise it's going to stick. The other alternative, which is what I tend to use when I'm doing this, I've just got to come around this side and get it, is I use a damp dish towel. So what you want to do, you want to take a dish towel, go to your faucet and wet your hands really well, and then kind of dry your hands a few times on the towel. Don't stick the towel under the faucet, because if it's really heavy and really wet, it's going to be heavy on the bread. It's also going to get cold, which will inhibit the rising. But this is nice and damp now, okay? And then this goes over your bread like that, and you're going to leave it until it rises to double its original size, 1.5 to 2 hours, okay? All right, I've got more dough here. I'm going to do a couple of extra things with this. Let's see. Oh, what the heck? I'm going to do a little braid for you and show you how to do a braid. I'm going to make a small, it's like a challah, but it isn't a challah because challah dough is sweeter than this, but I'll show you how we do this because it's kind of fun. I'm going to make a mini one. So, and you can do this with 3 or 4, but I'm going to do, it's going to be, as I say, a wee one. 6 little pieces, all right? And I'm going to roll these out. This is kind of fun. I can remember how to do it. I do know how to do it, but I always have to remind myself how to do it. I'm just making a little one. Try and make them all roughly the same size. Give or take. If you like this and you, like me, I have to always check, but you have to check. If you want the instructions for making the challah bread, as far as the braiding is concerned, just shoot me an email and I'll copy the page and send it to you. So this is going to be a wee one because normally you do about 20 inches long. So. All right, there we go. So you start off 6 pieces and you join them all at the top. Pull that one out of it. It's still there. 6 pieces like this, all joined at the top. There we go, slightly bigger one there, never mind. 5, 6. Okay, so you have 2 in the middle, 2 legs here. This is what you do. You start off, you take the last piece you put down. Let's say you'll never be able to remember this. And you put it between the 2 legs. And then you take the other arm and put it between the 2 legs. Then you take the outermost, the new arm, and you pass it all over there to become that arm. I told you this wasn't easy. And this one comes over here. All right, there's my bread. And then you come back in the middle like this. Hold on, let me go. All right, that's my finished whole wheat. Let me turn this horrible noise off. There we go. Hold on, where am I? Okay, so it's like this. Okay, so, all right, so we did this and this. All right, so it's these ones. This goes up, these come down, this comes down. Then you go over and over. Sorry, I've lost, oh, hold on, ooh, lost one. There we go. That comes over, this comes over, this comes over, and you tuck it underneath like that. Just a funny little thing. You could do just a regular 3 plait as well. All right, I'm going to pop that on here. I would brush that with maybe a bit of egg or something before I bake it. All right, and then if you're going to make rolls, divide your dough into equal sized pieces. Again, remember they're going to expand. Take your dough, make sure you've got a fairly dry surface. Take your dough and kind of wrap it round itself like that. I've only got a little tiny one here. And then put the flat of your hand on the table, slightly risen obviously because you've got the dough underneath, and push into the counter like this. And as you're doing it, raise your hand up like this. So you give your roll some height like that. That's a tiny one, isn't it? All right. Because if you just do it flat, and that's also the way you do a bagel. When you do a bagel, you do the same thing. So flat, flat, push it, push it, push it. This helps to knead it, make it nice and smooth on the top. Raise your hand up. Keep going around till you feel it like cupped, or you feel your hand cupped around it, like that. All right. If you're going to do, yeah, one last thing. So if you're going to do, I'll do that with all of this. If you wanted to just do, as I say, for this thing, either using a bowl like this or just a free form, take your dough and go like this. Make it round, 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 like that. All right. With your seam underneath, because that's all going to fill in. All right. When you bake your dough, make it, you can make it high and then you can flatten it down afterwards if you want to, or you can leave it high like this. And you can score, again, you score before before the second for the rising, before it goes in the oven. All right. And then you can bake it right like that. Another thing you can do as well, if you wanted to do something like sprinkle something on the top of it, like sunflower seeds or something, right before it goes in the oven, gently brush it with water and just sprinkle, very gently sprinkle the seeds on the top. And that's a nice idea. Or you can do something like sprinkle with cornmeal. I like cornmeal on the top of mine. Also, just, I know we're getting close. I should open these things up. Also, as far as adding, once you get sort of fairly comfortable with this, start using a few other ingredients that aren't going to really mess it. Like, I like oats. I like cornmeal in my bread. I use the basic recipe, add some cornmeal, sometimes a little bit more water. And then it gives it a slightly grainy taste, a nice grainy taste. It's really good. All right, so finally, I am going to, I didn't get this thing out, did I? Woo, it's hot. Also, the one golden rule you shouldn't do, I'm going to do it right now, is you shouldn't cut warm bread because it tends to cement the bread together. But I want you to see what it looks like. So if this looks a bit cemented inside, woo, not my fault. Also, other thing, if you're looking for a crustier crust, there's just some more stuff. If you brush the top of your loaf with water before it goes in the oven, or you can take a pan, an oven-proof pan of something like a cookie sheet or something, a deep cookie sheet, put a pan of water into the oven while you're heating it. So it will create steam. So it's like a steam oven, not as good as a steam oven, obviously, but it will enable you to, it helps to make the outside of the crust a little crustier and works a little better. Also, if you have a proofing capability on your oven, that means it's actually set as a proofing oven, because you can't put your dough to rise in an oven at your lowest setting, because your lowest setting is probably 135 degrees and that will kill the yeast. But if you have a proofing setting, which I have on too at the school, it's 100 degrees, and that really helps, particularly in the winter time when your dough takes a little longer to rise. Okay. All right, so let's cut this one first. I'm going to cut right down the middle. This one's a little cooler, so this one should be okay. Yes. All right. We've got some holes. Still a little warm in the middle. I've actually, yeah, see, even this, we've sort of squashed it a tiny bit in the middle, which we shouldn't have done, but that will be fine once it's fully cold. And this one, I am going to cut the end because I don't want to cut in the middle, because I definitely will, it'll be hot in the middle. Nice texture, okay, not hard, it's similar weight to this one. It shouldn't be heavy. If it's really heavy in your food, you could kill someone with it. If you hit them over the head with it, that's not good. All right, should have some smaller air bubbles inside, and as I say, you can play around with it. Oh, one other thing you can add to your whole wheat, molasses will give you a darker color as well if you add molasses, so you'll get a browner bread if you use the molasses. Okay, has anyone got any questions? Please, you've been so quiet. I haven't stopped talking, that's why. Yeah, if you've got any questions, please unmute yourself. If not, I think we're just about done. I managed to just do that in an hour. That's pretty good for the first time. And any comments? And I hope you got a chance to make your doughs. If not, obviously you'll perhaps do it now. Yes. I can hear someone's unmuted.
I have a question, Gaynor.
Yes.
So I know you can brush egg white on the dough before you put it in the oven, or before the second rise, I'm not sure. Or you can do milk, or you can do egg yolk. Can you explain which one does what?
Yeah, well, the water will just help to crisp it a bit. I generally don't use egg on mine. It depends what you do. Now, if you're doing something like a sweetbread, like a brioche or a challah, then I might use egg yolks. You do want to be really careful. You can do egg yolks, egg whites, but make sure you and do it just before it goes in the oven, not when it's rising. Make sure that you only put it right on the very top. If it drips down the side, it may inhibit it from rising on one side. You might get a lopsided bread. All right, but you can use those, and it'll color it. Obviously, the white will give it a slight glaze. The whole egg will make it slightly yellow. The egg yolk on its own will make it more golden on the top. All right, but generally, egg yolk is generally used for what we consider sweetbreads, brioche, and things like challah, normally. All right. Anything else?
Bread flour was hard to find in the store. I only found wheat flour and all-purpose flour.
Yeah, it's this crazy time we're living in, isn't it? It's kind of tricky. Actually, there is, I forget the exact amounts, but you can add vital wheat germ to all-purpose flour, which will make it into bread flour. If you can get that, it comes in a little jar. It's called a vital wheat germ, and that will, I think it's like you take 1.5 tablespoons. I haven't done it for ages. of flour out and put the 1.5 tablespoons of wheat germ in, and that will sort of create your own sort of bread flour. All right. If you can get that, of course. You probably might have, I know you can definitely get it on Amazon, the wheat germ. I bought it from there. So if you're having trouble with the bread flour, then perhaps do that would be a good idea. But as I say, it works with all purpose too. It really does. I often make it just with all purpose flour, you know, depending on when I'm at home, depends on what I've got really.
So we can use all purpose, for the wheat flour, we can use all purpose instead of bread flour.
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay.
You can do anything. It's just, you know, the nice thing though I think about making bread is that you can play around with things and you'll realize what works and what doesn't, you know. I mean, I've been making bread the whole time we've been in lockdown, and I actually made a starter, and I've been working with my starter, and I've made a starter for years, and I've had, you know, some have been really good, some haven't been quite so good, some have been a bit heavy. It's kind of fun, really. It's just, I think it's really good to start with the basic all-purpose white to see what you're aiming at, you know, and then you get different results, you know. It's not, I think it's, I much rather make bread than make pastry any day. Although I'm doing a pastry class next week as well, but so sorry, I interrupted somebody. Yes.
I'm sorry, is adding gluten the same as the wheat germ you recommended?
Well, that's what yes, that it is the same, but yeah, and it is what it is the wheat germ is dense gluten. That's what it is. All right, the vital wheat germ, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, it is like intense gluten.
Okay.
All right. So you can, and then, you know, you can play around with different things. I sometimes put things like flaxseed in. I've done, and then I've moved on and done things like sun-dried tomatoes and garlic, and, you know, stuff like that. You can really, and I use this basic dough for pizza dough as well. I quite like it. I sometimes put a little bit of olive oil in instead of some of the water, but I use it as it's my go-to dough for all my basic stuff. The white flour one. I think I use it all the time when I make pizza. So it's pretty flexible on what you do with it. And again, you can bake this in a loaf pan too. You can do that. That works as well. It's just that with the whole wheat, it definitely works best in a container of some sort, as it is a looser dough. All right. All right. I think we're done. Unless anyone's got another question. It's so great to see everybody. So wonderful to see my lovely little relatives in Liverpool, England. We've gone international. My niece and her husband are in Liverpool, England, and I thought you'd be out celebrating the Liverpool win today.
We're just recovering now. Today, so.
Oh, okay. Liverpool Soccer Club won the big league the first time in 30 years. Are you impressed? I knew that, Ben.
I'm really impressed. Yeah. Has Ali got anything to do with that?
No, I heard it on the news. So so that was a big thing. I lived in Liverpool for a while. I love Liverpool.
Really enjoyed that.
You're welcome, guys. Take care.
Yes,
all right. Yes.
See you again, Gaynor.
Any feedback would be wonderful. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Gaynor. Have a good day.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Is that Charlie?
Bye-bye.
Hold on, Ben. How are you guys? Good?
Yeah, we're good. Good. We were going to bring you back.
We love that. That was great, Gain.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. As I say, I was a bit worried with the timing, you know. So I'm looking at you on the reason I'm looking here, I've got you on another screen here because I can't get.
Are you G2 as well as Gaynor then?
Yes. So yeah. I do it. I set it up because where my iPad is, like across here, I can't see people, and if I put everybody on, then I can't see what people see of me. I want to be able to see.
Okay, we were like, can she see people? Can she not? Wasn't sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're so calm. I don't know how you can bake like 50 loaves.
You've got so many things going on at once.
This is easy because it's all bread. It's when we do couples nights and we've got like multiple things. I tell you what, we're calm on the cooking side, not on the technology side.
You seem
it's gone very smoothly, yeah.
I have spent 2.5 days trying to, and I think I've got it, but I'm not clever enough to do it right now, how to actually set up my iPhone linked to my iPad Zoom to use as a second camera on me, so that like I could have had a camera over the bowl here, and then me talking like this and flick from it. And I've kind of worked out how to do it, but not enough to use it. And the reason I was late checking in this morning, when I was playing around yesterday, I put a stupid background on my page. I opened it up and there's me with all this green like foliage behind me. I'm like, oh Christ, I don't know how to get it off. And in the end, I clicked on it. I was like, oh, thank God, it's gone. I mean, I don't know how it went. And this is the thing, when I worked out how to do this thing yesterday, I was like, I've worked out how to use it, but it took me so long to get there. I can't remember how I got there. You know, it was like, I was like, oh, fuck. Like this, I was trying to do it and I just couldn't. It was going back. And Dan gave up and he's meant to be the computer person. So, you know, it's like, oh God, I don't know. So yeah, I told him this afternoon, we're going to work on that and see if I've got 2 tripods now. I'm all, you know.
Yeah,
It's so professional. It's great.
I've got so much bread. It's going to have bread coming out of our ears. So,
Yeah.
So what did you manage to get whole wheat bread, guys?
We did the white one.
Right.
We got some strong white bread flour. We got that.
Oh right. Oh nice. Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
It's just proving at the minute in the box. It's already grown. It seems like it's.
I know it will grow quick. It will grow really quick.
Really, it looks nice.
I got up at like 7 this morning to make the second batch and to do the other ones and get them ready. So I was up early doing that. So, but yeah, you just kind of.
Sorry, I was going to say we're watching the whole wheat one, so we'll probably try that. Yeah, once we've eaten all this, we'll try the next one.
We'll do it.
Yeah, and you know, your flours are different. I mean, English flours are different to here. So you again, it's just getting that water content. I would say if it doesn't look right, it's not right. You know,
Ours is a bit wet, wasn't it? I think ours is wetter than yours.
And you may find then that if when you bake that it tends. I mean, I've done it loads of times. I've made it a bit wet, and it tends to spread out a bit, which means it's heavier because the gluten doesn't puff it up. You know, so it happens all the time. It happens quite a lot. But
it was a little stickier to this, just a little bit, not too much. But yours seemed to not really stick to all ours, just a little bit.
Yeah, and mine varies all the time. You know, as I say, I've been using this starter, making these. Dan goes, can we have regular bread again? I said, no, I don't want to make it with yeast. I want to make it with my starter. He goes, yeah, but sometimes it's like a hockey puck. I said, yeah, I know.
It's harder though, isn't it, with the starter? I've tried the odd one, like sourdough with the starter, and not always worked. And it's
no, I know. And what I did was I made it. Probably 3 months ago now, and and that's been nice because I've been using it for all our bread. So it was worth doing. I'm going to put on this one, it's easier. But it's a pain if you're only using it every 2 weeks because you've got to feed it. That's better. Feed it in between, you know, which is a pain. And then it died. I've had it in the fridge now. It might have died. I don't know, but we'll see. But it's fiddly. I mean, I was doing a class. Well, we tried doing a class a few years ago, an advanced bread class with all sourdough starters. I had like 4 starters, but you have to start them like a week before. I had them like all over the kitchen, and then the class wouldn't go. You know, it'd be like, so we took it out because it's just too much work.
Yeah.
You know, and also you read so much on different ways of doing it. It's crazy. You know, like do it like this, do it like that. You know, and like feed it every 2 days, feed it 3 times a week or something.
Yeah, so many different things online, aren't there? All
yeah. So did you guys celebrate last night?
We were working. We were watching Glastonbury, so we were hoping to go to Glastonbury this year, and that would have been this weekend.
Oh, right, yeah.
Repeats of Glastonbury, weren't we? But on, was it Thursday night when it happened at Liverpool? There was just fireworks all night long.
I heard that. I heard they did, but there was some fires though in the centre of town, right? Wasn't there something?
Yeah, apparently. I think there was a fire on the Liver building, like not a big one, but I think something.
Oh, right.
They love their fires, don't they? The Liverpool fans.
Yeah.
They were partying.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, if anyone knows how to party, it's the Liverpool fans.
I know. Just hope there's not free-spread coronavirus everywhere.
I know. I mean, it's like
loose yesterday about Florida.
9,000 more cases in Florida yesterday.
Awful, isn't it?
Crazy. Yeah, she was saying they're pretty much in lockdown again now.
I bet. And the thing is, there's such a high percentage of elderly people in Florida. You know, that's where people go. you know, they retire down there, or they spend, well, because it's the summertime now, but you know, they spend the winter down there, and it's like a really high elderly population. People are crazy. I mean, it's like I had to go to the funeral home yesterday, not to do with the corona. It was just a friend of Meg's, her mum passed away rather suddenly. So, and you know, here they do viewings, which are pretty horrible, but I thought I should just go because Meg couldn't go. And I go in, and I'm there early, like from 7 to 9 or something. And I go in, I've got my mask on, you know, and a couple of people came in, they've got a mask on. We go in, the family of the woman, nobody's wearing a mask at all. And we ended up, there was sort of a big room, and unfortunately I got there just as the priest decided to start saying prayers and stuff. I thought, oh, God. You know, so, but we're there and we're all standing around. Oh, I lost my picture. I've lost my picture somehow. Anyway, we're all standing around in a big circle, and half the people aren't wearing masks, you know. I don't know why I lost your picture. I lost it. Anyway. But yeah, and it was just really weird. And I felt, and we weren't, you know, we weren't 6 feet apart, you know, and I thought, oh, crikey. Here I come to pay respects to somebody. And then the girl who it was, she hugged me, which I can understand why she hugged me, you know. But I got in the car and got wipes like this, had short sleeves on, and I came home and got in the shower, you know. I mean, I haven't hugged anyone except my own kids for 4 months.
Yeah.
You know.
Which friend was it of Meg's?
It was Grace.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it'd be on a leak, so no.
Yeah, no. This was a girl from town. She's great. She's a musician, and she's really hip, but she's a really cool person. Yeah. Her mum was only 62. She was an air hostess, air flight attendant, and she was on a flight, and she felt a bit dizzy, didn't feel great. She got off the plane, collapsed, and died.
Oh my God!
I mean, and we don't know what it was. No idea what it was.
God.
I mean, no one said anything. So yeah, awful, you know. And she's been divorced for years. So the girls. Well, actually, the kid's father died a number of years ago. I don't know how come, but while they were still in school. So yeah, it was awful. So that's why I felt I should go. But I must admit, I came home. I said, Grace hugged me, and I know why she did. But I feel, and it's horrible to feel like that, you know. But
it feels so unnatural, doesn't it? That we're all so like.
We hugged your mum, didn't we? That's the first person we've hugged.
Yeah.
She came out.
Yeah.
Well, when we went down to Atlanta, you know, went down to Alabama, because you're allowed to. Well, it's changing a bit now, but you are allowed to travel. And like, this is the thing that irritates me. Not irritates me, but makes me worried. Is that the rules are different in every country.
Yeah.
You know, so what you can do, you could only go 5 miles. We could get on an aeroplane, or we could drive. We drove to Alabama, you know, and you were allowed to do that. And the only reason we hadn't done it before was because of the baby. You know, we didn't want to any risk to the baby. But I walked in and I said to Andy, because Andy hates hugging, and I said to him, now, before you say anything, stand right there, and you've got to give me a big hug. Oh God, okay. So he's like just about manages one, you know, like this to me, like this. And I go, come on, I want a proper one. Put your arms around me properly. He goes, oh, Mum. So yeah, it was lovely. It was so nice to be down there.
You worry that like one country will get on top of it, but then another won't, and then it's just going to keep going round and round. That's the scary thing.
I know.
They're allowed to go to Europe, like as of next week. You know, on holidays to Spain and Italy. And you think, sensible? I don't know. I'm not sure.
No, I know. Well, New York and Connecticut, and I don't know, Delaware, whatever. Anyway, but New York and Connecticut have told people coming from 5 or 6 states that they fly into New York State or Connecticut, they've got to quarantine for 14 days. That's flying internally.
God.
Because of Texas and, you know. But also there was a thing yesterday, I just came across something on the newsfeed. In Florida, they had a sort of debate before they reintroduced mandatory masks, you know. And there were people saying, this is ridiculous. This is my right. Yeah, you're right.
You told me about this.
I know. And it's like the masks don't work, you know, and you're infringing upon my constitutional rights. And, you know, and then one guy said, I fought for this country. I support, I mean, typical nauseating American patriotism makes you want to puke. And he's going on like that. And then he's going, and I can look after myself. Now I'm thinking they should just all inject them all with COVID and let them get on with it.
Yeah.
Okay, show me how this is only the flu, you know?
Yeah.
Like that, the leader in Brazil, that Bolsonaro guy, you know, he says it's only the flu. Well, okay, show us, get it. And
I know, well, that's it. We saw what happened when Boris got it. Flipping it.
Oh, I
We
know.
nearly left us.
Nearly lost them.
I know. And then Djokovic has got it.
I know, yeah. It's so weird. So weird.
It is.
look
But I
at
just
Pfizer.
hope we don't have another wave. I really do. But I don't know.
It's hard as well, isn't it? When like we've all got family all over, and it just means, yeah, that we can't make plans, can we, to all see each other, which is
No, I know it's crazy. I mean, we had Meg up here last week. She came and worked, so she's been working from home the whole time. So like you guys, and she'd only really seen, I mean, for the first couple of weeks, she didn't see Dan, but then she's been seeing Dan. She's got a roommate who she works with.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think her previous roommate, they've distanced, sort of socialized out on the deck, I think, a couple of times, but that's all she's done, you know, goes to the grocery store. So she didn't want to come up and see us until we'd been to Alabama, you know.
Yeah, it's so hard.
It's really hard. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. It was great. If you want to do the pastry, pastry one, let me know. I'm doing the pastry one the weekend after next. Yeah, not July 4th. The pastry one is going to be, the Friday night might be a bit hard, but it's only half an hour Friday night. Friday night, Saturday morning, and Sunday morning.
Okay.
Or you can even just
pastry, really.
And I'm doing, it would be midnight on Friday, but I'm just going to do half an hour just making the dough. And then I'm going to shove it in the fridge, and then on Saturday, so I mean, you can even just join on Saturday and Sunday if you want. Just let me know, all right?
That could be cool. So with this, would you recommend a baguette, or would you recommend making it as a loaf?
When it comes out, see how, if it feels sticky, like if you put your fingers on and it does this, sticks to your fingers, then I would put it in a loaf pan. If you can roll it out, I don't know why my screen keeps going off. If you can roll it out with it just being, as I say, just damp to the touch, but your hands will come away, then do it as a baguette. But as I say, otherwise it'll do this. You'll end up with a baguette that's like this wide and like this.
Okay, cool.
Believe me, I've done it.
Well, it's looking nice and pillowy at the minute, isn't it?
It's good.
Yeah, do send me a picture when it's done. Yeah. All right. Take care, guys. Lovely to see you.
Thank you so much. It was really fun.
Welcome. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.